There should have been a change in the championship. There would have been a change in the championship. But there isn't really a change in the championship after this weekend, where everything has changed, but not the race winner. A lot happened. Six red flags, gusts of wind, lots of drivers being bottled behind, a very overachieving midfield pair. And in the end, a rare McLaren DNF, the first time since Las Vegas 24 that both the cars, or at least any one of the McLaren cars, is not in the top six. But why is Lando Norris not the championship leader? And what exactly did we make of all the drama? And who was, by far and away, the driver of the day? Let's discuss on this episode of the Inside Line F1 podcast. This is our Azerbaijan GP review, or as the world likes to call it, the Baku GP, which is a better name, shorter, and we can all at the end say, well done, Baku, because it was well done, Baku, Kunal.
It was. I think we should just call it the European Grand Prix, like it was the very first time it hosted the Formula One race. They wanted to claim they're a part of Europe. But you said something interesting. Why is Lando Norris not leading the Drivers' Championship after Baku? Please tell me how exactly would that have panned out, given that
Yeah.
Piastri's lead was more than the 25 points that were available today?
Yeah, that's true. But he could have come much closer. Like, not even Lee. Okay, Lee, maybe I got carried away. I really
You can
wanted him to come
excuse
close.
Soumil today. I mean, you can understand his favorite driver's been on the podium. You can excuse him for forgetting all the permutations and combinations and where every team is. That's totally fine, Soumil.
It's joy. Today is just joy. No, but 5 points is not enough. What? It's now 26 points ahead. So 25 points is now the advantage between the two of them. It could have, should have, would have been more. But I don't know if Oscar Piastri is where I want to start, where there is brilliance from Max Verstappen on the other side to discuss about Sundaram. 67, wasn't
Yes,
it?
67. And I think we don't tend to talk enough about Max Verstappen. The fact is that he does have these masterclass drives every now and then, and we totally try to shift focus to the other drivers who've done a good outing. But Max, in my opinion, won that race yesterday, not today. That one lap that happened after the red flag interruptions that really put him at the very front to kind of gain from what chaos was happening through the rest of the pack. I mean, if Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, maybe Charles Leclerc had qualified in the top five, maybe this would have been a different race. Maybe the strategy and execution would have been different. But the fact that you have a Carlos Sainz, a Liam Lawson, and then a few other cars who don't necessarily have the sort of pace that a Red Bull or a Verstappen have, it was an easier outing for him of just managing the lead and making sure that he didn't make any mistake. But still, this was a very well deserved, a very well fought win by Max Verstappen that puts them in a good direction for the rest of the season. So, just like we often say, well done, Baku, I would say, well done, Max Verstappen.
Again, you said something you're gonna pick on. You're saying he won it in qualifying because of that exquisite lap that he put out. I completely agree with that. That his qualifying lap was probably the best lap we've seen. I mean, he has more poles than any other driver this season, including both the McLaren drivers. Although I still get this feeling, even if Norris or Leclerc or whoever else was in the top five, I think Max just has unlocked something in that Red Bull Racing car, which would have seen him speed away and win. Because I do believe this was also one of those races where maybe the Ferraris and the McLarens of the world underperformed so much so that the Williams was actually beat them on merit, and the Williams
Yeah.
also beat one of the Mercedes on merit, of that of Kimi Antonelli. But okay, while we're talking of Max Verstappen's brilliance and the way he's pulling these things off, one question: do you guys think 7 races, 69 points? Do you guys think Max can be in the drivers' championship battle in 2025?
This feels like one of those moments that will be clipped at the end of 2025. And it's probably going to get memed, very likely. But I suppose these questions are usually Ferrari fan questions. So it's very interesting to see Max Verstappen fans also ask Ferrari fan questions that impossible
Sommel,
probabilities are real or
yes,
not.
yes or no? Do you think Max is
No,
in
it's
the
not
title
happening. No
battle?
chance. Like he's the best driver on the grid, but it, there's a far more a far greater consistency in what McLaren are doing. So
What do you
this
think,
is an
Sundaram?
outlier.
Okay, so my answer is, as of today, as of the end of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, I would say no, only because Monza and Baku are two very specific circuits, and it's kind of worked in Red Bull's favor. Even Zandvoort wasn't an out and out dominant race for Max or Red Bull. If you ask me this question after Singapore and after Max Verstappen's won that race in a dominant fashion, then I might change my answer,
Yeah.
because the point is, in the next 7 rounds there are some tracks which will not suit a Red Bull, and if they have found a way to operate and execute these things across all types of layouts, all types of conditions, then it's a different thing. It's a different thing altogether. We've seen Sebastian Vettel win 9 in a row. We've seen Verstappen win 10 in a row, and even if McLaren take a podium in each of those races, I think it'll still go down the line. But I'll answer this in Singapore. As of today, no.
But the question, my dear friend, is after Baku, because if you look at it, two back-to-back race wins. When was the last time Max Verstappen had two back-to-back race wins? It was in
Last year.
Canada and Spain last year, so more than 12 months ago, right? And my feeling here is that even he's got a completely outside chance. It needs a lot of things to happen to the McLaren drivers, like it did today, and it needs to see something happen to them for at least two out of those seven races for things to suddenly look favorable. But the other question, just as a follow up, is do you guys think Red Bull Racing should have sacked Christian Horner earlier in the season? And then, if that would have happened, Max Verstappen would have been a contender in this year's Drivers' Championship, because it suddenly seems like this. Horner is gone. Guess who gets a podium? Isaac Harjar.
You're
Horner is gone.
stirring the
What?
pot,
One
Kunal.
sec.
You're stirring the
Hor-
pot.
Horner is gone. Liam Lawson, best result ever in qualifying and in the race. Horner is gone, and Max Verstappen has unlocked two race wins at circuits where he's not done well at. Let's remember that. For Monza, they'd never had a Monza specific wing. They've got that and they've won in Monza. They've gone what they call the driver led way when it comes to making setup changes. We've even seen Yuki Tsunoda, best qualifying and best result as a Red Bull driver. So I don't know. I mean, Christian Horner's at one factor that Red Bull could have gotten rid of earlier in the season, and they would have been in the title fight. Who knows?
That
You
is
guys seem
stirring the
shocked.
pot. That is
What
stirring the
pot?
pot.
But do you not see the correlation as I do?
I mean, see, if you talk in terms of upgrades, I think a lot of the upgrades that came out in Zandvoort or Monza would have been signed off by Honor back in the day, because that would have been at least 2 to 3 months in advance. But the ways of working that you're talking about, absolutely
Yeah.
right. That
Yeah.
the atmosphere that Lauro Mackie is being able to bring in that team, and even maybe in Alan Permain, it's somehow helping the likes of a Hajar, a Lawson, and even Sunoda seem a little bit more positive, even in terms of the way he's going about his race weekend. And probably that's helping them come up with those results. But yeah, we'd never really know if
But that
Honor had
that
gone last year. That's difficult to say.
my I mean, of course, I'm stirring the pot, but my point is just look at what the Red Bull and Red Bull affiliated teams have done at Red Bull Racing and Racing Bulls. And I'll in fact even flip it. This was McLaren's worst weekend since a long, long time. And I wonder if just seeing Max and Red Bull remotely in the title fight, did McLaren buckle under the pressure of, oh my God, Max is in the title fight? That's what Andrea Stella has been saying all along, that we're suddenly thinking Max is not to be ruled out of the Drivers' Championship, because we saw Oscar Piastri, who had his best race of the season of his career last year in Baku, suddenly drive up like I don't even know Nikita Mazepinish, because what did he have? He crashed in qualifying, which is fine. Fine, crashing is okay, right? He's got the speed and he's crashed. But imagine his race. He jumped the start, he hit anti-stall, and then opening lap into the barriers, right? McLaren having a slow stop, McLaren not being able to use strategy to their advantage to even get Lando closer to the top five. He finished where he started. So I'm just getting this feeling that Red Bull and Max Verstappen being there has suddenly put all this pressure on McLaren, because they thought it's just going to be a walk in the park. They've got the strongest package possible. Drivers' Championship was, between their drivers, so much that they were controlling which driver will get how many points per weekend. I don't know. Am I stirring the pot still, Soumil?
Yeah, I think you are, because there's a very, very crucial factor in the middle. It's that this is what 2 weeks of constant racing and 2 weeks of having good racing can do to the momentum of things. But let's zoom out. We're still in the middle of a McLaren dominated season. It is still so much in their favor. And these two circuits are outliers in that way. I think it'll take a lot. I think that day won't be far when Max being in the championship will make McLaren afraid, but not today. I think these are two outliers. But that day could be nearby.
In terms of car, package, upgrades, performance, yes, it's a McLaren dominated season. But do you really feel that's the case when it comes to the drivers? In terms of drivers, I still think it's a Max dominated season. I mean, Max
Yeah.
has needed half a chance to convert whatever he's converted. Let's remember that.
Yeah, exactly. Which is where I think this weekend was a stark reminder that you may have the best car, but to extract pace from it in changing conditions, you need a great degree of skill and feel and judgment and technique and awareness and patience and aggression and calmness and communication skills, everything.
But that's
That's
what
what
I'm
he did
saying.
this weekend. He did
That's what
everything today.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Max has done all of that. And the way McLaren, just blew up and it broke in Baku was just like, wow, that was so un-McLaren like on every quarter. And it was literally all down to the car not being in the window, not being balanced enough, and Norris and Piastri scratching their heads on how to extract more performance, all of those things put together. But, I just get this feeling that even if Max is not going to win the title this year, the Drivers' Championship, real outside chance, I get a feeling he and Red Bull Racing are going to give an absolute go for it. Nobody knows if in the full downforce configuration in Singapore, Red Bull will do well. If you go back to Hungary, what Max was 1 minute 12 seconds behind the race leader, so maybe that scenario will repeat again. But there just seems more optimism in this. And like I said, getting rid of Horner has suddenly allowed a lot of people to, I don't know, be more confident, take more risks, trust Max Verstappen more. It seems like a more people-led decision in a lot of ways, because how is it that just putting Loro Mekies in place of Christian Horner has suddenly made Red Bull, like they're saying, it's become an easier car to drive, just like, say, the Racing Bulls that Loro Mekies did. So that's another correlation as well. Loro Mekies joins Racing Bulls, it becomes an easier car to drive. We've seen that with Hadjar and Tsunoda earlier in the season. Then we've seen that with Hadjar and Lawson. And now we are seeing that with Verstappen and Tsunoda in Red Bull Racing as well. So lots of interesting tidbits to pick given this whole Red Bull ego battle, power struggle that we saw play out in against Christian Horner.
Sundaram, I read that a lot of it is down to common sense questions that Laura Mekies will ask in the Red Bull garage that put the focus back onto the driver and what they particularly feel like. And this weekend, that resulted in Verstappen largely being able to turn the car from his front. That's what Mark Hughes has written. Excellent piece. You should check it out on the race. And they went for a particularly lighter rear wing because they're like, Max can control it. Max can manage the turn in. Give him an aggressive car on the turn in. He'll figure the rest out. Just like it was the case in Monza where the car was so on rails, like we're finding a very delicate balance. This is great driving. It's excellent driving. And that too in changeable wind conditions.
Which is exactly why I say the brilliance of Max Verstappen actually happened in qualifying. The fact is that even between yesterday and today, the weather conditions were not the same. Wind was, I think, at least half as less as severe compared to yesterday. Yesterday it was around 60 kph. Today it was around 35 kph. And being able to adapt in those situations. If you listen to James Vowell's interview yesterday, he said there was a strong headwind because of which Alex Albon, his turning angle was a lot shorter. Whereas if you have a tailwind, it's the opposite. You go a bit more wider. And Max Verstappen throughout qualifying did seemed completely unfazed with all the weather conditions, all the wet weather and all of that. So he's able to extract everything from that car. Of course, we know that, but he's also able to adapt on the go at every single breaking point. That's really the beauty of the driver that he is. And in my opinion, it's a little surprising that they've now adopted this driver first approach, or all this while they've been trying to basically correlate what's happening in the simulator and what's happening on track. It's a little surprising to me. But you do see the difference. Before the summer break, you've often heard Max throughout Fridays completely unhappy with the way the car balances and somewhat happy in qualifying. But since Netherlands, you've not heard him complaining as much on the radio. So something in terms of operation also at Red Bull in that summer break, in that 3 week break, something is completely turned. So he's a lot more happier. The team is hitting the right spots when it comes to balance. And as a result, he's able to execute it better. I shouldn't say just him. I think Red Bull is probably the only team that is executing to this order, and not even McLaren. Even though they have a quicker car, I think it's Red Bull that's able to execute that so well across the team.
And I must say, you mentioned Sun Foot. Sun Foot was when Max Verstappen came back onto the podium after what, a seven
Yeah.
race streak of no podium. So all of this again points to that fact that suddenly Red Bull is firing as an operation, which is scaring the living daylights out of McLaren, and they all broke. Especially Oscar Piastri broke in Baku, I would say. But what are we moving
Yeah.
on to next? Is it Williams? Is it
Lots
Racing
of
Bulls?
comments.
Let's go
Lots
for
of
that.
comments.
When
Chinonso
are we going to
says
answer the
they
biggest
better.
question?
Yeah, exactly. They're coming. They're coming. Chinonso says they better hope that the Red Bull is not back. Yes, exactly. Uh, there are. Sarka saying I'm throwing shade left and right. I don't even remember who I threw shade on. But let me know. That'll be a lot of fun. Fiancho says Andre believes more in Max and his drivers to defend a 100-point lead, which, yeah, I'd do the same. And Viraj, building on Kunal's point after Monza about where do McLaren draw the line, it may sound crazy, but could today be like them telling Piastri that hold back crash, make it look natural? I'm not sure about that. But what I'm sure about is us talking about Liam Lawson, because that is exactly what Sadhna has pointed out, and we need to bring it up. How about Lawson being the wall for several laps? How about that? P5, great result.
I think that was fantastic, right? Because all four Red Bull drivers scored points. Actually, considering Carlos Sainz is probably five drivers who scored points. But I think the way Lawson and Tsunoda also kept Lando Norris back in the drivers' championship, given that Max is not just battling Oscar, but can Max actually get Lando Norris for second place? Imagine the embarrassment that would hit across all quarters if Max was to do that. So the way Lawson and Tsunoda were driving against the likes of faster cars like Norris and Leclerc and Hamilton, I think they did fantastic. And Lawson again made it all work in qualifying yesterday, because qualifying effectively yesterday was one of the best qualifying sessions in a long time, but it was reduced to what we would call as a one lap qualifying, a single lap session where you just had the one lap. If you were lucky, no yellows or reds would come out then. And also, even if no yellows or red would come out, what would matter is if you were actually on the right tire as well. So there was a lot of luck at play. But I think Liam Lawson in that qualifying session, much like Carlos Sainz as well, did a fantastic job to deliver. And I love seeing Lawson bounce back. And if you guys remember, on our channel itself, Franz Tost was saying Liam needs to be given a hug and he needs to be given time. And look at what time has
Yeah.
done as a factor. He was so confident with his overtakes, and especially when he sort of overtook Kimi Antonelli outside of the, on just when they exited the pits. And of course, he got overtaken back because he ran out of battery. So I think Liam Lawson again is making, he's telling Red Bull that you need to think twice before you drop me, because I've hardly ever got time and stability to sort of swim in this shark pool called Formula One.
No, I think for me, Liam is the driver of the day. Not discrediting anything that Max or Sainz have done, but the sort of circumstances that Liam has found himself in, right from last year, the start of his career, replacing someone like a Danny, coming this year with a lot of hope that he's going to remain Max Verstappen's teammate for a long time, and then very unceremoniously being chucked back into the second team after just 2 races, and then Sunoda being given a longer rope, and also seeing his teammate on the podium very recently. So I'm sure mentally there must be lots that was probably playing on his mind. And Lawson was actually one of the very few drivers who improved in that very last bit in qualifying after the red flags were done. So Science did not improve, if I'm not
No,
wrong. I don't know.
Sainz actually improved. Sainz was the
He did
other one
improve.
who improved. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, but when I noticed that Lawson also improved, so I felt okay. It's not just a case of him using that opportunity. There was pace in that car, which he has executed, and then defending the likes of a Sonoda or a Leclerc or Hamilton. These are experienced drivers around him. So, and especially at a track like Baku where there are no second chances, I think he's going to take confidence from this race, and he doesn't really know where he's going to be racing next year. So today is going to be a very very happy day for him, the way he drove.
Yeah, that's so true. I really want to go to Carlos next, but Feyanshu has come up
Of
with a comment
course.
that is an excellent observation, and let's circle back to that, and let's keep Carlos's celebration at the very end because of course my mic is blue as well. So is my bed sheet for today. It's amazing. It's all pointing in the right direction, blue and yellow. So we'll get to Carlos in a bit, but Feyanshu's question is excellent. How has Oscar lost less points than he would have in a P1 P2 situation with a Lando win? Sums it up, buddy. Sums it up.
It's crazy. It's crazy the way this McLaren have. In my opinion, McLaren really looked like rookies throughout this whole weekend. Unfortunately, nothing went nothing went their way, right from practice to qualifying, and seeing their drivers make these sort of errors. Seeing Piastri making these sort of errors, and the word of the week is uncharacteristic. We often say that when Fernando Alonso crashes, but it's also the tag you would give Oscar Piastri, someone who's able to hold his own, be able to deliver under pressure. You've seen him literally crack under pressure in the last 24 hours. So yeah, very, very, very odd outing for McLaren and Piastri.
And if I can add to that, I've been trying to wonder with such a large points advantage that he's had, what's the key pressure point that he could have gone through? And now I'm assuming, I haven't spoken to him, and my assumption is he probably was, the way we've all reacted after Monza. This was probably his reaction after Monza, saying, "Oh my goodness, I could be the best driver in the world, I could." But suddenly somebody throw a papaya at me and say, but buddy, you got to give those points back to Lando Norris. And I'm pretty sure for a driver like Piastri in his third season in Formula One, you know, rising up through the ranks, fighting the legends as he grew up with, Verstappen, Hamilton, Leclerc, and now Norris, he's probably just like, what do I need to do? Because maybe my fate in some ways is sealed by what McLaren wants to do as well, which is what we've seen, right? So maybe this was that one of those reactions, just saying, my goodness, if I have a bad race, okay, I'm doomed, because when I have a good race, McLaren is not backing me, right? So if I'm doomed, like, so that's probably the reaction I believe he's had, that the complete shock from Monza and how a racing situation like a slow stop was still turned around and made to work against him. This was probably one of those reactions. I don't believe he will come back to this. Maybe this was a one-off. Like they say, you're allowed to have one bad race in a championship, and Baku is probably that for Oscar Piastri.
I mean, I think we can all cut him a little slack over yesterday, because like I mentioned earlier, yesterday's conditions were very tricky for them to navigate around qualifying. But I think today's pressure point was solely the fact that he found himself in P9. His biggest rival is 2 places ahead of him, and he's going to be losing points. And I think there was just some sense of eagerness to go ahead and climb up from P9 to the podium spots or the top five. And because of that, he jumped the start, and then he realized, oh my goodness, I've jumped the start. So now let's stop. And then he finds himself at the back of the grid. So then there's this sudden panic that you really have to. I'm back in P20. The rest of them are further ahead. Who knows? Norris is probably up to P5 already. So I really need to make some ground. And in that probably hurry, he didn't. He just misjudged himself and found him against the barrier. So I think that's probably where the biggest pressure point was for himself. I did anticipate himself to be a little furious, but then for some reason he wasn't throwing his gloves around. He didn't sound too angry on the radio as well. But it's just, I think, one blip in his entire campaign. I think Oscar's going to come back to his usual self from Singapore.
And I believe also it was one of those bad lucks that you could point out when he was braking for that left-hander. Both his wheels were on the white line, and that probably caused a loss of grip as well, because there was dew in the air, slight drizzles of rain. In fact, that part of the circuit was also slippery in Formula 2 races. And immediately, McLaren was on the radio telling Lando Norris, watch out for those white lines at that corner. So it was
Yeah.
probably freak. It was probably down to no pressure. It was just like, oops, I just, ran out of grip and I went off. But my point about pressure is also what you said, Sundaram. It's about the start, him jumping the start, him causing Fernando Alonso to jump the start, and then him hitting anti-stall and all
Yeah.
of that was a bit of a comedy of errors. But yeah,
You see, Fernando's getting a little old, so I'm not sure if he can actually see the lights that clearly, and he was relying on the car ahead. That's the only
Come
reason why I thought
on.
that's the only reason I thought he would be relying on the car ahead as the reference point. But yeah, sad, very unlucky for him as well.
Hey, Sadhna, I'm not the one throwing shade. You are. So she's saying, so Lando DNFs in Singapore to balance it all. Oof. Well,
I'm surprised there were no calls on the radio. You see, Lando Oscar's crash, so we kindly request you to crash as well.
I
Let's
think
make
I
this
think
championship more interesting.
Papaya rules just works one way, and that's not the way it worked today.
That's all fun and
Okay,
jokes, everyone.
yeah, before everyone jumps at us.
right. We do need to talk about other stuff. I think Viraj's comment is a perfect segue into what I love a lot. We were about to keep it for the end, but then I think Kimi Antonelli deserves a mention in the end. So let's go to Carlos next. Some more pain points for Ferrari fans. We got a Carlos podium with Williams before a Hamilton podium with Ferrari. His observations today, chat is cooking. It's true.
I mean, Soumil, tell us how are you feeling? Because for I mean, I know that pain personally, seeing your favorite driver not on the podium or taking race wins. When this odd podium comes across, it feels like absolute heaven. So how are you feeling today?
Carlos is my logical favorite. It's like the driver I know mentally is the most sorted, and it didn't make sense when they removed Hamilton for him because why do you break stability? So today is one of the days where a stable driver with a lot of experience just keeps on chipping away and gets a
Yeah,
podium on an unlikely day. That result makes me very happy. As much as it also did to see Lewis Hamilton acting a little selfish. He said he forgot to let Leclerc pass, or he couldn't do something successfully. He had to
he
slow
couldn't do
down,
it.
and it's slow enough. But I love seeing things like this. I love seeing both these drivers in action. And it just so is very interesting that Sainz, the one who was dropped, has gotten a podium before the man he was dropped for. So he's a solid driver, Ferrari. You need to remember.
Uh, and I think Sainz has a very interesting portfolio right now. I'm sure he's gone back to his CV and updated it. One of only two drivers to take a podium with three most successful teams in Formula One: Ferrari, McLaren, Williams. Each of
Oh,
them,
seriously?
yeah, the three most successful teams in Formula One in terms of world titles. Sainz and Alan Prost are the only two drivers to take a podium for all three of them. That's very good company to be in. If you find yourself in the same room as Alan Prost or the same record as Alan Prost, I think you should take pride in yourself for that. But in all seriousness, it's so heartening to see someone like a Carlos Sainz get a podium because unfortunately, or maybe this is a Spanish thing, unfortunately he's always found himself in teams that are always rebuilding themselves. He's never found them at the better part of their journey, be it Renault, be it McLaren, be it Ferrari. He's always left these teams at a better juncture, and he's probably always felt that, oh my god, what am I leaving this team for? And in that sense, he might be feeling a little happy right now looking at how Ferrari's campaign has gone, and on the flip side, seeing the likes of an Alex Albon rack up the points and whatnot. This will be a good confidence booster for him. Something because in terms of execution, he rightfully put the point himself on the front row, and he rightfully put himself on the podium as well. So it's good to see drivers like Carlos Sainz get get that hard-earned podium. This, like I've said before, this is the season where hard work is getting rewarded. Be it the likes of Alan Permain, Nico Hulkenberg, and now Carlos Sainz. This is that season.
Yeah,
So
there's a new
is
podium. There's a new podium finisher, no? Because there's
oh
Nico
yeah.
Hulkenberg, Isaac Hadjar, now Carlos Sainz, Kimi Antonelli, and Carlos Sainz actually now jumps 6 positions in the drivers' championship. He's up to P12, 1 point ahead of Liam Lawson. I think it's 30 points and 31 points or something like that. But I think the most important thing that I want to add about Sainz is he did it on merit. He
Yeah.
qualified that car on merit. He stuck that position on merit. He used his brains. He realized he cannot chase both the Mercedeses. He said, "I will chase one of them down," and he sacrificed the other. So what I mean is he let George Russell through, even though he was race engineering his own self, saying, "Let us not get into undercut range with George," right? And then he made sure that he just covered up for Antonelli. So I think all in all, fantastic execution by Williams, and this is what James Vowles was set out to do: get to fantastic drivers. Doesn't matter, which driver it is, but you're able to execute such high performing races with both sets of drivers. And the strange thing for Williams is they would probably be hoping, which race will it be when both drivers are able to fire things up? Because up until now it's been Albon, pulling all the weight for the team. Now suddenly there's Carlos Sainz. What will happen if it's both drivers actually trying to put things out for the team? And that's what they're hopefully going to hope that it fires in 2026, if not in the last few races of 2025.
Now, that's a brilliant point that you made, Kunal, that Sainz found himself on merit on the front row, and that podium also was on merit. And this is one of the few occasions where I'll tell you not to go by the stats, because the last Williams podium was Belgium 2021. They didn't have the best of cars, and if the race did
Yeah.
go through, maybe Russell would not have been on the podium. And if you go further back, the last Williams podium was Lance Stroll at this very track, and he was also the beneficiary of a few drivers ahead of him losing out. But if you go further behind that, the last time Williams was actually competitive and the last time they were on the podium on merit was the days of Felipe Massa and Valtteri Bottas, which was a decade ago. So we
2014,
could
right?
14, 15, those
Yeah, and
seasons, 14 and
that's
15.
typically when the other
14 and
teams were
15.
not
Yeah.
doing well because they had the Mercedes power unit, Williams, right? So it was about who had the Mercedes power unit, and you'd probably be in a better place than others with a Ferrari or a Renault power unit.
So that's the
Yeah.
thing. So Williams being there on merit after a very long time is something that I've been waiting for a very long time. And a lot of the newer fans might not know, but Williams actually is one of the most successful and most decorated teams in Formula One. So very happy to see the likes of a McLaren and Williams back again at the sharp end of the grid
Yeah, and also performing
performing.
consistently. It's
Yeah.
amazing. Comment Sarika says Ferrari has been rebuilding since 2008, which is true. Here's a comment that I really, really love. Virat saying, missed the last couple of sessions. So great to see F1 stats guru Sundaram back after quite some time. And did F1 stats guru just say, don't go by the stats? Yeah.
Jeopardizing my
Interesting.
own day job, but I always say that don't go by the stats, let's talk context. That's why we three are here for.
Exactly. And so we must end with the last couple of topics. We must, though, touch up upon Kimi Antonelli, who was not underwhelming. Not underwhelming to say the least. I think he performed really well, had his elbows out against George Russell, which does show a lot of confidence. Executed it when he had to. And at the end, of course, the undercut did not work out because his tires were far too old to attack at the very end. He got himself in a good position. Not going to lie about that. But yeah, eventually just not finding himself on the right side of the tire age, and that cost him out. And Sainz was able to stay ahead, along with the fact that it's a DRS train. But still, good confidence. I think it's not underwhelming, Kunal. It's not.
No, not at all. And I like that drivers are able to hear these negative comments and then spring back. And I think largely what really worked for Mercedes' favor and also hence Antonelli is there was cooler conditions on track. So that's what got George Russell and Antonelli there. But he still had to get in there and pull out those laps. I think him being as close to George, and some people said, but George was unwell. But the fact is, George still decided to drive the car, so that was still a team decision that whether you're 90%, 95%, or 100%, you're still driving. And I think Antonelli didn't put a single foot wrong, whether it was overtaking Liam Lawson, whether it was making sure qualifying he went through despite having just 5 minutes in Q1 and Toto Wolff coming on the radio, Kimi, we just need a clean lap. It's 6.5 minutes to go. So I think he did extremely well, and George Russell will also take heart in the fact that every time Mercedes is there, cooler conditions are there, he's able to bring in all those points because now Mercedes has jumped Ferrari in the Constructors Championship, right? That's what's happened. They're four
Yes.
points ahead. But crucially, what George Russell said in the post race conference is where my interest goes. He says, in the battle with Ferrari, maybe at this level in the current form, there's a chance that Max Verstappen will finish ahead of us in the Constructors Championship. And he actually said Max Verstappen, right? And then Max reminded him, actually, you mean Red Bull? So he's like, no, I mean Team Verstappen is going to finish ahead of Mercedes and Ferrari in the Constructors' Championship. So that's how much Max's performance is bringing championship battles into focus. That between a Ferrari and Mercedes, I think Red Bull are, 18 points away or something to that effect in fourth place.
I think the one person we haven't spoken about today is George Russell, and I think he's someone who often tends to go under the radar for a lot of reasons. But the way he actually came into this weekend, like Kunal said, it seemed at one point he might not be participating. But despite all those issues, he's found himself in P2. And the reason I'm just trying to pull out a couple of stats over here. So, in the 20 races that we've had this season, including sprints, 17 Grand Prix and 3 sprints, he's finished in, I think, in the top five in 16 of those. Verstappen's finished in the top five in, I think, 17, Lando Norris 16, Oscar Piastri 18. So, he's literally right up there with the front runners. And George Russell is really not one of those drivers who's going to be blistering on pace and he's going to really awe you like how people think about Max Verstappen. He's just going to go out there, do his duty, extract as much as possible, and then just look around and see if there's an opportunity or a little bit of luck for a podium or a race win. There's been opportunity, there have been situations like that, and for that reason, I think George Russell deserves a little bit more appreciation on how he tends to go about a season. And qualified P5, made his way up to P2. I think a very, very good drive today.
And that should bring us to the moment of the day. For you, Kunal, was it Lewis Hamilton unsuccessfully trying to keep Leclerc behind? Because that does have to go
There
down
we go.
in one of the weirder moments of the season.
I believe Lewis tried. It didn't happen. The funny part is that given that nobody had run the hard tire, Ferrari, much as several other teams, had split strategies between drivers. And it just so happens that, and we'll talk about tires in a minute, it just so happens that Charles's tires were done by the end of it. But still 2 laps to the end when Charles went onto the radio and he said, Lewis has not attacked Norris, Tsunoda, or Lawson. Does this mean we are swapping back? And Brian Bozzi said, let me check. And then immediately there was a radio order saying we'll swap back on the last lap on the main straight. There is an audio clip released showing how Lewis Hamilton did indeed lift off to let Charles through. Of course, there are beautiful, moments to that, saying, did he lift off so late that Charles couldn't catch up, or was Charles so far away that anyway he wouldn't have caught up? But truth be told, doesn't matter. We all spoke of how Charles needs to break the curse. We spoke of how this could be Ferrari's best chance to win a race. None of that happened. In fact, they ended up losing P2 to Ferrari, to Mercedes in the Constructors' Championship. So, does it really matter what happened? That was the moment of the race, maybe. But I'll tell you the moment of the race after I hear what you guys actually pick your moments of the race.
Ooh. I
have
asked
to
the
think
question
about
and I
my
got
moment of
stumped
it.
myself. Oscar
Why
was definitely a moment.
Oscar was your moment of the race, of course.
Oscar
Come
definitely
on.
Baku
was.
breaks Oscar Piastri.
With Carlos on the podium, your moment of the day is Oscar Piastri. Seriously, Soumil.
That's not a moment, no. Like it's
That's an
it's
emotion.
building up. Yeah, that's it's building up. Yeah, what are you picking, Sundaram? Oscar has to be there. Like
I'm still thinking, actually, to be very honest. I'm
Why,
trying to
why,
recap
while
what
you think
exactly happened in the race.
While you think I'll offer some context, why was Ferrari slow? Charles Leclerc was very clear. He said we've been using an approach towards setup which is not right. That's why the car is actually the easiest to blame, but the car was not in the window this weekend. And then he, of course, blamed himself for the qualifying crash, which put him in the back foot yesterday. And then he said the cooler conditions, anyway, we've seen Ferrari struggle, as I'm sure you guys remember as well. And then finally he said it was a boring race. And of course, it was boring when okay, Sundaram, have you found a point? Because if it was a boring race, gets me into a segue of, was it actually a boring race? But after you tell me
No.
what your moment of the race was.
Um, from what I can actually remember, one obviously is Lando Norris caught napping at the start of the restart. I don't
Yeah.
know what he was doing there, because everyone knows how long that straight is at Baku. At any one point, if you actually miss out on that straight, you're actually losing out till the very first corner, which is a long distance. So one of the many blips in McLaren's execution from this race weekend. And another one that comes to mind is Carlos Sainz telling his and planning out his race, or strategizing his race, telling them that I need to get into the pits before they undercut me. So him being as aware as always is great to see. So and on that note, I don't think so it was a boring race, or maybe is it just me?
No, it is not.
Why was it not
It's
boring?
fun. It's very, very exciting to commentate on. It
For
is.
I
some
think
reason,
as
I
a
mean,
commentator, it's exciting to commentate on every race, including the races we've had in Paul Ricard song.
okay,
But
I'm
as a
Absolutely.
viewer, what do you guys think? Well, I'll put it this way. It's not about it being boring, but maybe let me flip the questions. With so many cars out of position, Ferrari's out of place, Norris out of place, Piastri out of place, pretty much everyone in the top 10 was out of place, right? Wouldn't you all have hoped for more entertainment?
I think we got that. So I
We
think
got
that's one of
that.
the
Yeah.
reasons. I think that's one of the reasons. The fact that the order was so jumbled up. There was like for Lawson, Sonoda, Hajar, all in between the likes of Lando, Charles Leclerc, and all of that, which is what made it a little bit more exciting. Because for me, these are drivers under pressure. Antonelli,
Yeah.
Lawson, and Sonoda. For them to be in that mix right until the last lap and not drop it, because their careers are on the line for next season. For in that sense, I was literally at the edge of my seat trying to see if these people are actually going to make a mistake in Baku and lose it all. In that sense, I found it very exciting. But if it was a normal qualifying where Ferrari and McLaren had qualified in the top five, and if everyone had started with the same medium hard strategy, then it would have been a little bit more straightforward and boring for me. But for me, I think, yeah, there's something to keep an eye on every lap.
What do you think, Samuel?
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah, I agree with you. It was
I
strategic. Yeah.
was it really strategic?
I get you in the
Not
sense that the
strategic.
DRS trains did sort of make it trickier. And so as a driver, you've got to be even more aware of how to plot your moves and aware of what moments to be good at. So in that sense, it makes it a little tactical in terms of choosing your moments wisely. Like I enjoyed Antonelli versus Sainz. I enjoyed Antonelli versus Russell
There
as
was
well.
there was like 2 laps out of the 51 or whatever we did. Anyway, I'm not trying to
It's
convince you
not
that it was a boring
MotoGP.
race, but I'll put it the other way, right? There was actually no strategy. If you guys remember, we've
Yeah.
spoken of how what if the tires were so durable that you could just race on them all the time. Well, the 2025 Azerbaijan Grand Prix was one starking example of why durable tires doesn't mean better racing, because the tires were so good that the medium and the hard had zero degradation. Well, the hard had zero degradation, the medium had very low degradation, which is why you could just see that drivers were pitting to cover each other off, but they could
Yeah.
have just kept going on
Yeah.
the same tire, typically, right? Which also meant that, why did Carlos Sainz lose out to George Russell? Because even on an older hard tire, George Russell was able to pull out competitive lap times versus Carlos Sainz on the newer hard tire, which, well, technically just goes to show how much Formula One relies on degradation in tires
Yep.
to to create excitement on track, right? So if you have everyone on the
Yeah.
same tire, imagine if everyone started on the medium. This would have been a hell of a boring race. So my
Yeah.
point is, just better tires doesn't mean better racing. In which case, if you have better tires like this, I would have actually wanted the likes of Ferrari and the Mercedes and the McLarens all up front chasing Max Verstappen, because then there would have been some strategy. Because what happened is drivers being out of place like Sunoda, Lawson, Carlos Sainz, they just created a DRS train which
Yeah.
which allowed Max Verstappen to run away. So when I think of it, yes, drivers being out of position should normally give entertainment, but here in this case, it worked against it, which is why George Russell actually getting P2 was down to one crucial overtake. Like we pointed out, qualifying yesterday was where Sainz and Verstappen won their podium positions. George Russell won his podium position by that one overtake on Yuki Tsunoda. He overtook Yuki Tsunoda, right? Because at that time, Yuki Tsunoda was fifth, and he was holding a DRS train that went all
Yeah.
the way till
Good.
19th place, and
Mm.
20th was Piastri and out of the point. So my point is, I think it was an underwhelming race overall.
But doesn't that make the challenge of the moment greater? Like the one overtake you make or the one chance you have. I know we'd like more of it in terms of quantity. It's just where we are as Formula One. Like it's just a very tough place to be with the cars, with everything around, big circuits, big runoff area. It's just a big combination. But I think that is also super fun because you then watch it for that one moment. Like
Yeah.
you watch the golf match for that one shot that they're going to take. That's going to take them half across the game. You're waiting for something. You're waiting for that one moment, and everything that comes in beyond the precision,
But
technique, the
what if
build
that
up.
moment doesn't come? I don't think that moment came, at least for me, at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. I loved it because I could present all the narratives. But I'm talking of from a viewer's point of view, not from somebody who commentates along with you, Soumil. I mean, I just wish there was better racing. And I don't mean more safety cars and so on. I think it was underwhelming, like I said.
So that's the
Yeah,
thing. So
it's yeah.
like you correctly
Yeah, go
said,
ahead.
Formula One's reached a stage where we are really either relying on a little bit of rain to spice things up, like it happened in qualifying, and everyone absolutely loved how quali went, or you're relying on a little bit of tire degradation, which, like you correctly said, the weather conditions were so cool, probably mid to lower 20s, that there was no degradation at all. And I think it didn't make any sense whatsoever if you actually started on the mediums or hards. Eventually, just everyone converged together and the net order was more or less the same. There was no tire degradation. Probably the only one thing that really uh, drivers were managing was keeping the cars on track and managing energy deployment, which some
Yeah.
drivers often did find it a little difficult. But apart from that, no safety cars. Baku has always had two retirements in every race. It just had just one retirement and one safety car this time. So in that sense, all the trigger points or all the catalysts for a good race did not happen. But nonetheless, seeing the likes of these drivers try and battle it out for their positions, I still found that very, very interesting. Which is also why we're not talking about anyone apart from the top 10. We've not spoken about anyone below the top 10, because no one has any clue about what's happening there.
Yeah,
But I
that's
must
the
say,
UFC
I'm
versus
gonna,
fight, like the
yeah,
underground
go on, go
world.
on, go on.
That's what's happening, pretty much.
But
There's
I'll
an
tell you,
organized fight club in the top 10, and the others are just sorry about the lag. Nah,
no, there is some lag. Finish. UFC. I have no idea what that is. Not that I care much, but go for it.
basically the top half was UFC organized fighting, the lower half was Fight Club. There's just unregulated madness happening there that nobody speaks about, and nobody even dares to understand why. But yeah, there's elbows out.
Yes, and I'm gonna leave a link to a tweet. The most interesting and entertaining part of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix for me. I saw this on Twitter during the drivers' national anthem period. Lando's grid kid was singing at the top of his voice, hand on heart, kids around him screaming the national anthem, and the F1 drivers were just laughing their hearts out when they saw that. I'm talking of Russell, Norris, Piastri, all of them.
Wow.
And to, this is a beautiful. I mean, I'm seeing the video now because I made a list or made a note that I need to share it with you guys. But yeah, anyway, that's that.
I totally missed that.
I will share it with you guys.
Got to watch that. But yes, have we missed out on any team or any driver or any important talking point? I'm wondering.
Haas, perhaps, but
Not
that's all
really.
right. Aston Martin, that's all right. That's
Okay, I have a
yeah.
question. I have a question. So I think Kunal
Let's end
asked
after
is
this. Yeah.
Kunal asked if Max Verstappen is still back in the title fight. I'll ask the same question as I asked last year. Do you think Max can actually fight for second, if not first? Do you think Max is displacing Lando or Piastri from P2? Or basically,
I
is
think
Max
it's
finishing second?
50 point. It's 50 points to no. What's the points to PS3? It's 45. No, it can't be 45. It's
69. 69.
69.
69 to PS3. But what's the points to Norris? 45 points, I think.
40.
44. 44.
44. I think given Max's love for Lewis Hamilton, at this time when you're asking me, I think it's happening.
So as of today, you're
He's gonna
saying
take. He's gonna take. Yes,
the final order is Piastri, Verstappen, and then Norris. Is
that
that your
is what
prediction?
I will go for. Yes.
Interesting.
That'll be mental. That'll be mental. That'll be
Nice.
crazy. But guys, that is a bombshell to end on, though. We need to ponder over that for a bit. But I'm not for it. Kunal's for it. So we have a bit of division in the room. But that should be the end of our episode today. It's been a really fun discussion about a race that we eventually concluded was not so fun. So we had a lot of fun talking about it. This is a good episode. Lots of comments coming in. So thank you guys for doing the same, and thank you for interacting with us. Of course, more shorts coming in. Magazine show comes in during the week too. So make sure you subscribe to the Inside Line F1 podcast. Social media, both the channels, Instagram and YouTube. And of course, we'll be there to engage with you during the week and send across questions. We'll make sure we have them in the next episode. But for now, guys, goodbye. We will catch you before Singapore.